Hello ladies and gentlemen, Willie here. So today we have something a bit different from usual. Give it a shot and let me know what you think. With Blizzcon fast approaching, I wanted to air my thoughts for retail World of Warcraft for the future, hopes for what may be announced, and a look back at some of the issues that have plagued BFA. It certainly seems looking in that BFA has been the least popular expansion in World of Warcraft's history, or maybe about on equal level with Warlords of Draenor. Of course, we don't know this for sure, but I believe it's the case amongst many players. The live version of the game has taken several steps back in the wrong direction since things started seemingly to get back on track during Legion. Now, don't get me wrong, now we've got Classic, it's no excuse for me personally just to cast retail aside. At the end of the day, I'm always hopeful for improvements to be made, and I'm genuinely excited for the next expansion to be announced. Also, I'm keen to see whether and what lessons have been learned from the several issues with BFA, such as over-pruning classes, doubling down on convoluted loot systems that need a third-party website to be deciphered, pushing unpopular content again and again, like with Island Expeditions and Warfronts and so on. But first of all, the expansion setting. In terms of new content and the many leaks we've seen in the time running up to BlizzCon, I think there are a few frontrunners to consider. Some of them actually sound or look pretty legit. I do feel like the outcome of Ny'alotha and the current raid with N'Zoth and Ashara and all that, what happens in the end there will have a good deal of bearing on what happens next, just as how BFA was kicked off with Sargeras stabbing Azeroth in the culmination of Legion's final raid and Taurus the Burning Throne. And there seems to be two popular ideas as for where to go to next, that both make a degree of sense with the outcome of the raid, whatever that may be. First of all, the Dragon Isles. Originally intended to be a raid zone but ended up being cut, and we can see that in Battle for Azeroth some of the design ideas have already been put into use, like in the super cool architecture you see at Shrine of the Storm in Stormsong Valley. The real link to the Dragon Islands is the first boss in the new raid, Rathian, who we give a good old slapping. He's sort of been doing nothing since he made us a cloak in Mists of Pandaria, until now of course, where he makes a brief return to meme us with another cloak before going crazy. Doesn't seem too likely this will be the place we go, since the art style has somewhat been used and the link with Rathian doesn't seem like it's enough to get a whole expansion out of. Perhaps a zone or a major patch? That seems a bit more doable. Secondly, the Shadowlands. Seen in a number of quests already throughout the game, this is a counterpart to the living world in Azeroth, so it actually being a location we go to sounds logistically pretty strange. I'm sure they'll come up with something for it though, and it would make an alternative universe that we can cross back and forth into between normal Azeroth and Shadowlands Azeroth a possibility, though I'm sure there would be some new zones as standard. This sounds like a very easy way to reuse content. I'm kind of scared about how this sounds now I think about it. And of course, with League season in full swing now, it looks as though a certain member of the Four Dragon family may be making an appearance. It would certainly make sense too, since the Lich King is very much connected to the Shadowlands, as is the Frozen Throne. It does all look quite promising and adds up. There were also some ideas surrounding the Emerald Dream, but I think that's pretty much done now that we've had the Emerald Nightmare raid, and with much of the storylines around the likes of Ysera and the Dream Grove. I believe it's had its moment in World of Warcraft, at least for the time being. If anything out of these, I would say it's the Shadowlands or something old god themed. You know, like many people were saying what would come after Legion. I don't think anyone could have guessed Battle for Azeroth with what we would be getting, to be fair. Feature-wise, I think it's about time we got a new class. I could anticipate new allied races perhaps, since this seems to have been extremely popular, judging by how frequently Blizzard are releasing new allied races. I wouldn't expect actual new races until all standard races have an allied counterpart in the game. For classes, there are also two big ones that people are talking about: Dark Rangers and Tinkers. First of all, both of these have two big things going for them. They would both make sense being a range class, since every new class introduced since vanilla has been melee by the way, and ranged would be greater right about now. And it would also make sense for them both to wear mail, which is currently the armor type used by the least number of classes. And I know some people say that Blizzard needs to balance what we currently have before adding more, but well, MMOs and balance don't really go together. There's no harm in things being better than others, as long as it doesn't last forever and the gap isn't too wide. Here's an idea for you though. Blizzard could even do faction specific classes again. Dark Rangers fit the Horde better, and well, Okay, this doesn't really make sense for Tinkers so much. There's no reason why Goblins couldn't be Tinkers after all, but you see what I'm saying though, right? Anyway, out of these two, I would massively prefer Tinkers personally. I don't really see how Dark Rangers could fill out a class and feels unique from just some weird mix between a Hunter and a Warlock, honestly. What role would they fill as well? DPS? Sure. A range tank? Possibly, yes. Given a choice though, Tinkers would be what I want. You can imagine them DPSing with turrets, throwing wrenches and a gun and so on, tanking with a mech suit, possibly just like it was in the Mechatalk fight, and even healing with gadgets or potions, though Blizzard may just end up doing 2 specializations again to keep things a little bit simpler. Moving on from allied races, I think we may be getting allied classes or something with a name along those lines. These would functionally work just the same as any class would usually, but the spell names, spell animations and so on would be changed up to fit a different theme. Throw in a requirement of having to start from level 1 and we have the start of something that sounds exactly like the kind of thing Blizzard would do. And this one has been discussed for some time now, but it would throw a nice twist on classes without adding any additional new balance. Things like Gladiator Warriors where you DPS with a shield on, Blood Knight look for Paladins where all the glowy yellow gold bits get this sort of red makeover so they're more focused on the vengeance side of the class, choosing a way as a monk where your stance changes and your spells gain different colours based on the celestial you pick. Yulon could have dragon stance and greenish spells, doing tiger stance and ashen looking or white and black spells, and so on for the other two. I think this one sounds pretty likely and also pretty cool as well. I do hope they do this and I'm interested to see what they actually pour into the game, if it ends up happening of course. I hope that Blizzard goes back on its idea of not significantly changing classes during patches. I have a feeling I might be in the minority here, but I always looked forwards to severe shake-up in class balancing during major patches when it was necessary. And I'm not just talking about the numbers a class is putting out, but its gameplay and abilities. A philosophy of if you don't like how your class plays now, re-roll or wait for the next expansion just doesn't sit well with me. The worst example is what Blizzard did sub-rogues in BFA. Remember Shuriken combo on Zul? I do. Sub had a niche, big damage into one target if there are ads about, and yes, they were too good at it, I agree. Straight up removing the ability and giving them next to nothing in return, just so incredibly lazy as a solution. Blizzard basically just deleted the spec overnight, and it's still down in ranks to this day, and that's a decision made near the start of the expansion. Imagine something your class did was deemed unbalanceable and deleted overnight. The spec needed fundamental changes to redeem itself that Blizzard just straight up said we aren't going to do. And I hope Blizzard change their mind on this and make more effort to balance where necessary during patches. In terms of features surviving from Battle for Azeroth, there is work to be done. I think I can safely say that Warfronts are going. Since they were not exactly the most popular bit of content, they made more sense in BFA as something to drive the story forwards to a certain degree. I'm actually not 100% sure on Islands going. I think they may reappear and be used in a different form. Despite not being the most thrilling bit of content, I can imagine them being easy to shape up and reuse. And ever since Legion, it's been super meta to have some kind of thing you grind and power up. We've gone from artifact power to Azerite power, and I've no doubt we're going to get something with a new power in the next expansion. It's an MMO after all. Powering up, grinding, that's kind of part and parcel of the experience, right? At least to a reasonable degree. Azerite armor and the Heart of Azeroth are going in the bin 100%. There's no way these live on past BFA. Blizzard can throw in some kind of reasoning for it being powered down to heal Azeroth, just like we did with our artifact weapons at the end of Legion. I'm not sure either whether Blizzard are going to create another character supporting system not linked to talents or regular gear. But what I'm talking about here are things like the bonuses on your Azerite armor or weapons in Legion. Instead, I think talents are going to undergo a big overhaul to resemble something much more like they are in Classic. Maybe not 1 point per level, it may be 1 point per 5 levels or something, but just different from how they are at the moment. Moving on from the point about talents, we know at this point that we're going to be getting a level squish, which will work well alongside a talent revamp, as Blizzard will be able to give more meaning to each level again if they're reduced. If you didn't know, originally talents would change from linear as they are in Classic to tiered choices in Cataclysm, simply because it's difficult to create something new and meaningful with so many levels. Imagine if we still had Classic style talents in Battle for Azeroth. We need to spend 110 talent points. That is far too many. We'd need some Path of Exile looking talent trees for that, and I do understand with why it was changed actually, but I think this is the time to dial it back. In terms of leveling and level squish, we could see Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor being level 1 to 30 zones, Outland and Northrend 30 to 35, Mists of Pandaria 35 to 40, WoD 40-45, Legion 45-50, BFA 50-55, new expansion 55-60, or something like that. That seems to make sense to me. The return of Legendaries. I would expect Legendaries to make a comeback too. Now, this one is probably a little controversial, but Legendaries had some big ups and downs. On one side, the method of getting them was pretty poor in my opinion. There were too many of them, and getting a bad one early just felt terrible. Add on that when there are some legendaries that are best in slot for the whole expansion and others that are just big stat sticks. Also, some took up an equipment slot basically forever, which was highly limiting with tier taken account. On the other hand, there were some that were extremely impactful and changed the way you play in a really good way. Mantle of Master Assassin, Marquee Bindings of the Sun King. I bet you can tell me what your best legendaries were called, or at least the effects they had in Legion, because despite the negative points, give them a choice to have them back as they were in Legion or not at all, I would take them back. Maybe that's just me though. I think the gameplay options they opened up outweigh the randomness and issues, or maybe this is just apathy from BFA speaking now. Tier gear now, I would expect tier to make a return. Now, to be fair, I get why there was no tier gear in BFA. Traditional tier slots like head, shoulder and chest were taken up by Azerite armor, though they could have gone for tier rings or boots or so on. It's been done in the past from time to time. I think tiers are really fulfilling experience once you complete your set, and though not every tier bonus is super exciting, they often add that little bit extra to your gameplay. Oh, and tier is more than just set bonuses, of course. The looks matter too, and now what we've gotten during BFA has been pretty questionable, to be honest, especially considering the fact they only had to design one armor set per type per raid. So let's hope a tier revamp brings some fresh ideas, or you know, they could just copy paste and change an old tier slightly, you know, just like how they did using tier 6 for tier 20. Pretty much any Burning Crusade tier set or tier 2 would be a great one to pick, I think. And to end it off with something mobile-y. Yes, memes aside, it's bound to happen, right? That's where so much of the market appears to be going for Blizzard, and whilst I can hope for great things in-game, I bet there'll be some kind of mobile announcement, which could be a number of different things. There could be some kind of micromanagement minigame, like how garrisons or shipyards were, kind of like Farmville, stuff you manage each day. Either that or pet battles on mobile. The pet battles one seems a bit more likely, since Blizzard can more or less just look over to Pokemon Go and say, that seemed to work well. Anyways, it is what it is. It may be a bit more of a quiet announcement. No matter what they do for mobile, it won't be well received. And that's it. That's what I think will happen this year at BlizzCon. Now, I don't think any of the ideas are too far out there. A few we know are already happening. It's just in what form they happen and how they turn out. So what do you think will be announced? Also, if you've made it this far in the video, let me know whether you're planning to check out the next expansion, as depending on how it goes for me and how much I enjoy it personally, I may look into more retail content. So let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. If you like what you see, give the video a like and subscribe, as there's plenty more to come. As always, thank you all so much for watching. Take care. Bye.